Do you remember Outlaw Star? Yeah, great. Do you remember the dudes that were constantly chanting and breakdancing? Did you think it was cool that they didn't care that it was a sci-fi show with guns and spaceships, and they just decided to do magic anyway? Did their wholly separate identity, their own other sense of propriety, their own set of rules, whatever the those rules even were, I mean, look at this. Did they have an appeal to you? It was not easy to get this program into a format that my video editor would accept, by the way. I just want you to know that. Actually, no, it was beyond want at this point. I need you to know that. Did you think it was kind of hype that they were so bad, so untouchably kung fu nonsense, that if one showed up, the only way to get one to leave would be to get this black market voodoo pistol with no warranty and no instructions, and connect the thing to the Wi-Fi and use it to shoot like a rancid Twitter feed at them? Sorry, X feed, formerly Twitter. Did Jet Li's Hero, and Jet Li's Fearless, and Jet Li's other works convince you that floppy sleeves belong in combat situations? If you're not buying into this a little bit, if you don't believe that Kung Fu makes you magic and learning it will let you fly, then you should probably just turn around and walk away right now. But if you like the vibe, if you're intrigued, then the only other thing you have to know and believe is that you have good reflexes. Now, let's talk about the first time in 20 years I've heard the term Tao Punk, 9 Souls. Our story begins with a backdrop of drama and revenge. Quick survey. Who picked up this game just because of this one frame? Well, don't worry about why you're outside in this scenario. Don't look at the hands. Just answer the question. And if you said no, that's perfectly reasonable. I probably did. I can't even remember. It's been months. And I think some people would, because this is a really well-blocked shot. Whoever did this had some things in mind. Right away, you get ideas like the bigger figure symbolizes authority, and then the smaller one must be rebellion against that authority. Look, I might be overthinking this, but there's a lot of competition for people's attention now. So a strong elevator pitch like this is a really smart choice. If I was going to pick one thing that I really like about 9 Souls, I would say that a lot of its communication is exactly like this. Tidy, succinct, evocative. I shouldn't go too much further before I say spoilers. Right, okay. Let's go kind of quick here. Workplace accident. Increased insurance premium. Some magic Chinese food stuff, and we're back in action. Except we're stuck in the boondocks with a bunch of regular people, while we ourselves are a giant sapient cat. In order to hide our body covered with fur, we wear a hat. This is a great time for me to point out that our main character is a super space genius. This flawless disguise allows us to blend in and enjoy the local customs, the most notable of which is to be randomly chosen to go live with the gods, and to never be heard from again after that. Anybody over the age of 25 is probably saying, oh yeah, I know this one. They're doing a time machine. They're about to get eaten by the, what do you call them, the Modocs. We stick around, the big choosing happens, and it happens way more gruesome than you would expect. We blow the thing up before it can take the kid that we personally like, and then we jump inside of it to start our mission of revenge. It's a very quick intro. It's got to be at most 10 minutes. I don't think anybody has a problem with it. Except for me. I have a problem with it. Okay, not really a problem. I mean, look, just hear me out, alright? I have to say this or I'm going to lose my mind. Doesn't this scene make more sense if no one can see it happening? These people believe that what they're looking at is a magic rainbow road that's going to take them to God's crib. If they can see, in 4K with their real eyeballs, a man's head get divorced from his body with no alimony, wouldn't they stop believing that? Some of you, with great patience and understanding, are thinking to yourselves, you absolute ding-dong. You've blundered once again. This has to be here for the player. Not everybody's seen the time machine, or whatever else you want to name drop. You know, I think I could see that. It's a fine line to decide where to be explicit and where not to be. Without the blood bottle rocket, if it was just behind a curtain, someone might not pick up on the fact that these people are being taken for bad things. It might be too subtle that way. In the next area, right before the Torso Chipper 9000, the Flesh Sausage Dispenser, and the Hand Pickle Station, we got our first taste of combat in this game, which, as I'm sure you can guess, is based on parrying. Action game people tend to get a little bit enthusiastic when parrying gets involved. I may be a little bit guilty of this myself, but in my defense, it's not my fault that learning an enemy's attack pattern to the point that you can kill them with their own bullshit is so satisfying. And it's super not my fault that following what must seem like a well-worn checklist at this point in game design will allow me to declare your game the work of a noble house, regardless of any flaws that a person might be able to think of in like a minute. Or 3 or 4 minutes depending on the person. If the crossing of swords pumps the blood, then it really just doesn't matter. And in the case of Nine Souls, parry is much more finished than the rest of the fighting system. Your basic attack never evolves beyond 3 hits, not even with increased reach, which sometimes seems like it's really necessary. The magic system is 1 spell, with 3 different execution styles. And dodge is cool. He's around, he's a cool guy. But he's got a cooldown that's intentionally longer than a lot of these enemies' attention span. And when you least expect it, big tracking. So the man for the job is parry. Parry and only parry. Just parry. Simply parry. Smart viewers might point out here that because of the connections to real Chinese philosophy, it's more thematically appropriate to redirect the energy of an enemy's attack back at them, rather than to simply move out of the way. That's fine if you need a well-written reason to try and catch a sword with your bare hands. For me, it's just good enough that it feels satisfying. Here's an example of something that really makes this work. Y'all getting hit by this? Nah, you parry these. How? When? Look, it doesn't matter. After you play this game for a while, it really feels like either your hitbox is inside your gallbladder, or hit registration is delayed a couple of frames to allow you to parry super late. But I should warn you that there's a reason defense is so strong. As the game goes on, you will spend more and more of your time playing defensively, learning the enemy's offense so you can capitalize the most effectively. So this is best for somebody patient, the kind of person who sees an enemy introduction that clearly says, not easy, and says, let me get all the way in there. Because there's just no shortcut to growing that kung fu. And thematically, there wouldn't be. Everything in this world runs on kung fu. You call the elevator by doing kung fu poses. You use complicated computer systems by doing kung fu poses. Secured storage is backed up by seals, which connect to terracotta soldiers, which check your credentials with kung fu. Space-faring civilization, by the way. So you step outside of the meat factory, and there's just no other way to say this. Everything looks like the most over-the-top noodle shop you've ever seen in your life. Like a rainforest cafe of noodles. And I swear to God, this is the actual signpost to tell you where you are. The Tiandao formed in response to the Tianhua. They recommended everyone return to Kunlun, and this helped Peng Lai. Well, that's pretty much everything, isn't it? I've always thought of world building as the best when it feels like a language that you have to learn before you understand what's going on. And for some reason, I had never considered before that language just being Chinese. There's a careful drip feed of information and discovery that contextualizes all these terms, backed up by a world with a history that spans multiple distinct eras. Sometimes just sitting in the background, existing, is good. But like I've said before when people talk to me about world building, the characters are the most central thing, so we should talk about those. So the bottom line is that our main man Yi here wants to take the 9 keycards from all the executives because he disagrees with the general situation of leadership. Yi is a dour, prickly old man. He's likable to me because he's never in his entire life even tried to be likable. Not even to people who like him and are being nice. He's angry, but he's past the point of punching walls. Yi's at this point with his co-workers. When he said, per my last email, what he meant was that really was my last doggone email. The time for questions about the world around us has ended, which is fine because Yi has pretty much seen all of it already. Now all he's really got left is disgust and distaste. Now in a setting as alien as this, where the presentation doesn't explain itself obviously, you would expect somebody to ask questions. Somebody bright-eyed and full of hope that maybe we just recently saved a few minutes ago. Now for sure, angry old man and redemption child is a well-used and well-loved trope, and maybe you even lost a little bit of interest in it because of the way I just described it. But I think it works here for 2 reasons. First of all interactions with the child are totally and completely optional. You can cultivate this relationship to whatever length you really want to. You can teach him all kinds of stuff, make him into a thinker, someone who can really cope with the world around him. And you can expose him to technology that's vastly more stimulating and addictive than anything he was ever designed to comprehend. Just like my dad did. And the second it stops being interesting to you, you can just stop talking to him. Secondly, and this pretty much affects everything else about the game, the localization and dialogue is fantastically written. I can't tell you how accurate the localization is to the original meaning, but I have played very few indie games from Taiwan where the dialogue flowed this well and conveyed this much character. Let me give you an example. At one point, you're chasing somebody that you want to murder through a storage facility, and you stumble onto a magic gremlin. You ever read the last letter written by that tyrant that died? And Yi is a smart, well-read kind of guy. He doesn't just say yes. He says, we can't really prove that that was the dictator or not. Forging ahead, the magic gnome says, yeah, when the would-be conqueror, the dictator, was finally cornered and his capital city about to be taken, he poured his entire energy into that last letter, and then he killed himself. This is something that current generations could never in their entire lives replicate. So maybe trying to emulate the past, maybe trying to hold on to it just for its sake, is a mistake. I mean, some people have trouble letting things go, says local expert in losing his grip. This, on top of being an interesting conversation about the setting, is also characterization for this character, and this character. Who put a compelling narrative in my Samurai Pizza Cat space murder game again? This always happens. Story-wise, I only have one major note. Well, aside from the fact that I really don't think adding boob jiggle to the BBW cat girl was like absolutely required. You guys use puppet animation for the portraits, so obviously animation budget is limited, so this one I think you could have skipped. Maybe less would have been more here. But my only note is that I've definitively decided based on this that for indie games, multiple endings is usually not going to be a strength. For a lot of games, what it ends up feeling like is you have one ending that capitalizes on all this subtext that's all over the dang place. And then you have another one that just kind of happens. I think this game would probably be better if it only had the one ending. That's my hot take. I guess one other story note that I could say is that I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the design room when they finally decided that Yi just shouldn't have a mouth. Like, it works really well from the side, that's obviously a cat, but then they show him from other angles and it makes me see something a little bit sillier, that's all I'm saying. Anyway, despite the very competent story, I came for action, so my main note will be on action. I think the biggest and most obvious source of friction that some people will have trying to get into this is inconsistent behavior with the dodge. A lot of enemies have attacks that extend behind them. Sure, okay, so prefer to block instead of dodging through people. But what about when those attacks stick around? Can you see what hit me here? I'm not sure if this is because of the delayed hit registration that helps the parry out or what, but the bottom line is it makes something that looks clean feel unreliable. I give this one a pass, because it doesn't stop things from feeling good when you get all the way up to speed. And when you remember that you can catch everything that they throw at you. They have to break the game. Otherwise, they'll never touch you. You're a god! Do it! Do it, cowards! Break the game! I want you to! And for a personal gripe, unbounded counter is kinda garbage. You hold down guard for a while, and once it's charged, when you release the guard button, you get a perfect omnidirectional guard, which will catch even unblockable attacks. Works really well for the design of everything around it. It's very Tai Chi. It's pure defense, exactly what the game's aggression fits. Except, what you're hearing is the sound cue play that indicates that the counter is ready. But if you release right as the sound cue plays, you get nothing. Your defense doesn't engage. When everything else feels so exact, why does this have a big dead spot right at the beginning of it? Normally, I could go on at length about these last two things being inconsistent and making no sense. But for some reason, I just kind of feel like letting it all go, you know? Anyway, give it a play. I think it's alright. That's it for this year. It's hard, okay?